All right. From the mixed metal arts community, I am the Moxcentrist, and this is Mixed Metal Arts Chats. So last week, I had Andrew do a bit of homework, and guess what? Before I even talk about the subject, which is what is Gamergate, I'm going to have Andrew explain it to you guys. Andrew, what is Gamergate?
Well, it seems to be this group of people that sort of was formed in opposition to people accusing people within the gaming industry of being sexist and that kind of stuff, like making making female characters in video games too attractive or something like that. And it seems like maybe and people got carried away with that sort of thing. And I guess that's basically what I think it is. I mean, you know a lot more about this than I do, obviously.
Yeah, I just wanted to see what kind of knowledge you can gain about Gamergate by just doing research.
Oh yeah,
I was just
I didn't really learn that much about it from doing research. I learned a lot more from talking to you about it.
I'd say what you say is partially true, but it's very much goes way deeper than that. We want to talk about the beginnings. What started it all? Um, well, anything that has gate at the end, of course, denotes that a scandal has occurred. So, what was the scandal that caused Gamergate to happen, or at least make it become a Twitter handle? Well, the scandal that started it all, and I won't want to preface this that it's not the scandal itself that Gamergate is reacting to, but it's you still have to kind of go into that history. But the scandal was some people call it an ex-lover's screed. Some people call it an ex-lover speaking out about how they were poorly treated. It really depends on the political ideology of the person who interprets what was said, but in essence, um, there was a independent game developer. So what an indie developer is they work on their own. They're not hired by a big company. It's typically very small teams of people, maybe less than 10 people working on a video game. In this case, um, I don't know exactly which game they were working on, but something happened. So what happened was a jilted ex-lover posted a gigantic blog like hanging the dirty laundry of their relationship. What he finally uncovered, whether it's true or not, that's up to debate, is that his ex-girlfriend had cheated on him with like five people, five men. There were other names for the scandal. One of them was called Five Guys.
That's
Uh,
a way
hashtag
better
Five Guys.
that's a way better name for the scandal.
Hashtag Zoe Post. So, so what happened after that? Um, I don't believe that his message or the post itself was there was no political motivation for it. The thing is his politics are very much in line with his ex-girlfriend's. It's not even a political issue. It's just, hey, this chick is bad news. I'm here to tell the world, don't get into a relationship with this chick because she'll screw you over. So, in this revelation, the five people, many of them had ties to the game industry. One of the people that was listed, I believe, was a journalist. So people got really upset. And give me 1 second.
Do 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 do.
All right, I just had to attend to something. All right, so you have this post that people find out about it. It's drama, so of course a lot of people were speaking about it on online forums and Reddit and everywhere else. You're like, oh, look at this big drama, look at this scandal. Oh wow. There are other things that people pointed out about the scandal itself. They're looking at the names of the people she had relationships with, and people were very concerned over one of those names. It was a journalist from Kotaku named Nathan Grayson. Um, People were like scratching their heads, like, the only reason we really know who Zoe Quinn is because Kotaku keeps writing articles about her. Like her in the larger gaming milieu, Zoe Quinn as a developer is pretty much an irrelevant person.
Oh,
All right, give me a
yet
second.
that name sounds familiar to even someone like me who really doesn't know much about Gamergate at all. So that tells you how much the media sensationalized this whole thing in a way. Let's go back to the Jeopardy theme before Dusty gets back. Do 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 do. It's interesting to think about how accurate the news is that people get from blogs. It's important to remember how subjective they are, especially if we're talking about the blog of one person on the internet, I think. Bet Dusty knows a lot more about this than I do. I know a later part of this that we'll probably get into and that Dusty has told me about before is the how this movement kind of went a little bit extreme, and how when Dusty basically left the movement, if I remember correctly, was when Gamergate started to become some sort of like anti-feminist thing, and they were going for witch hunts a little bit, which still kind of happens a little bit. But that shows you the nature of movements in a way, I think, because sometimes they can be good, sometimes they can be necessary. Maybe we should be cautious about starting movements and what we're doing with those movements, because maybe they should only be used in extreme cases when they're really important. And clearly they can get out of hand because of all kinds of different movements get out of hand, especially when movements are explicitly politically motivated, but often they're implicit political motivations, often, I believe. Let's try this. Dusty's been gone for a long time now. I guess another interesting thing to talk about is how extreme people's views can get on Gamergate on either side of it. People get ideological about it on both extreme ends of the spectrum, just like with anything else, I think. Like, they're super pro Gamergate people who really do get involved with this whole, like, pointing out people's hypocrisy when feminists get all up in arms over every little slight they see in a video game or something like that. But then on the other side too, there are probably, people who go after game developers, and maybe they do a little bit too much sometimes. Maybe they go after these people unjustified a lot, and then maybe the extreme Gamergate, or particularly the anti-feminist members of Gamergate, can just go accusing women for every little slight they see as false accusations of games, in the same way that people on the other end of the spectrum can go accusations for the people that they're against. Obviously, I'm not the first person to bring that observation up. I'm going to read from the Wikipedia page here until Dusty gets back. Okay. The Gamergate controversy stemmed from a harassment campaign conducted primarily through the use of the hashtag Gamergate. Oh, there's Dusty.
Sorry, I had to sign some people in.
Okay.
I had to actually do work stuff. Very sorry.
Okay. I just talked about a random perspectives on Gamergate off the top of my head, and then started reading the Wikipedia page out loud.
All right, well, we can go back to my story, which is the jilted ex-lover and her indiscretions. So, the most notable thing about this jilted ex-lover's note to the world was the relationship between Zoe Quinn and Nathan Grayson. So, in the gamer community, Kotaku was kind of pushing Zoe Quinn a lot. I know there were like 5 or so articles about this person, but to be honest, they were not a notable game developer. It's like, imagine if I just started writing a novel and it was less than mediocre, but I had I had a literary magazine pushing my stuff.
Oh.
And people are like, what the fuck? This is horrible shit. And then later they found out that the guy that was writing all these articles was in a relationship with that author.
Right.
And then they said, oh, this is why they were pushing this horrible shit. So, to be a journalist, there is a pretty strict code of ethics that you're supposed to follow. In the case of Kotaku and Nathan Grayson, of course, that wasn't the case. So, as someone who follows, or at least wants to read articles that they think are truthful, and then people can have a bias, but it's different when there's like a ulterior motive that's not very present, especially when it comes to pushing or advertising something specifically. In this case, it was Zoe Quinn, her weird antics. Like, some of the articles had nothing to do with her game. Like, I remember one of the articles was about her implanting a chip into her hand. Like, anybody cares about who this person is?
What was
Yeah.
what was the game that she was involved in again?
Okay, so the game is basically a choose your own adventure. It is called Depression Quest.
Oh, right.
It's not what you would traditionally consider a game to be. Like, if you picked up a choose your own adventure book, you wouldn't really call it a game. You'd just call it, you know, it's a piece of media where you do have some choice in where the story ends, but it's not really a game. I wouldn't really consider it a game.
Right.
Like, it's a book, it's a story. It's not really a game, but and anyway, that's the kind of game Depression Quest was. So because and this isn't where Gamergate like started. This is just kind of where it's an event that led to it. All right, so the Zoe Quinn was very much friends with a lot of, far left circles within games journalism. And unfortunately, at the time, and at the time, there was also a competition between print games journalism, and by print, I'm talking about like websites and written articles and things of that nature, versus video journalism. And we're talking about independent YouTube personalities who review games. They're not working at an office. They're just playing games and telling you how it is. So there was kind of this budgeting competition between the two. And and this is kind of part of it as well because that specific community was attacked in another way as well. But going on, because she had these connections high up in the digital online media space within games journalism, a lot of her friends kind of tried to put a kibosh on any of the discussions about the scandal. So what ended up happening in the comment sections of all these prominent video game news sites, they would actively censor any talk of the scandal.
Of
So
course.
you could not speak of it. And they would delete your comments. This happened on Reddit, in some of the main video game Reddit subthreads. This even extended to 4chan, and we're thinking 4chan. People say the most ridiculous shit ever on there. It's like, how are you going to censor talk about this specific scandal? Yet it was. So, people were like, Jesus, what the fuck? Even you can't even talk about it on 4chan, a place that's basically the Wild West of the internet.
It's
What's
Voldemort.
going on here? Yeah. So people are like, okay, there's something going on. There's kind of people are coming up with theories in the back of their minds about, oh, there's all these journalists are colluding to silence the gamers, blah 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 blah. So anyway, a few days later, weeks, I'm not exactly sure on the exact time scale. It's not far after that occurs. 20 publications come out attacking the gamer identity and gamers in general. And these are publications from game journal publications.
Oh, right.
So,
Men are all
again,
gamers are all sexist pig men.
yeah, basically, some of them were straight up saying that. Some of them were saying we have to abandon the gamer identity because it's full of toxic masculinity, etc., etc. So gamers were not happy about being attacked by the publications. They look to find out about the newest games and what's cool and what's not. Um, and this is kind of what started everything. A combination of unethical journalistic behavior, censorship of your audience, attacking your audience, and an extreme injection of politics into the conversation. Like, people like Anita Sarkeesian were kind of tangential to the whole thing, but they definitely were a part. The two narratives that are most attributed with Gamergate is that Gamergate was a harassment campaign against women in gaming. The other narrative is that Gamergate is a consumer uprising. There's other narratives like, oh, Gamergate was, the start of the culture war where we fought back against the SJWs. There's so many different reasons why people join Gamergate. And the thing is, it's kind of in the middle. I cannot say that nobody was harassed in this process. And if we're talking about the legal definition of harassment, yeah, there were people harassed. Bomb threats were called. And one of the main points of the left's version of Gamergate was this extreme focus on that. One thing that the gamers didn't buy was that one side was any more harassing than the other. The problem is it was going on both sides. Like, there were bomb threats, there were, mean tweets blasted at each other. There were events shut down because of threats that were both credible and not credible. But this was going on both sides. The left did not have a monopoly, or the people who were anti-Gamergate, so to speak, did not have a monopoly on harassment. So there was harassment going on either side. And anytime there's some type of stupid Twitter controversy, there's always people sending out mean and harassing tweets to each other. Like, I bet if I went on The Rock's account right now, there's going to be a shitload of people saying mean things to The Rock.
Yep. You're sexist, anti-LGBT.
Yeah.
Can't call people snowflakes, man.
Yeah, so in this case, do you call an organized harassment campaign against The Rock? Nobody is saying that. He just said something controversial and it pissed off a bunch of people.
Yeah.
Nobody goes around in a corner of the internet saying, "Oh, let's gather as many people as we can and just focus a bunch of hate tweets at this individual. All right, group A, go." And then we'll pull up group B in the flanks and we'll attack his misogynistic attitudes. Here in group C, you'll specifically target his homophobia. There's nothing like that.
It's like how
it's a conspiracy theory.
Yeah, it's like how Joe Rogan talks about how when people get mad at him on Twitter, it's like 13 people that really get to you, and then the rest of the 1,000 comments are positive or something like that.
Yeah, so it's the problem with the whole mainstream idea of what Gamergate is entirely a conspiracy theory. But there are some conspiracy theories on the side of Gamergate. Some of them turned out to be true, but there's many that we really don't know, yet some people purport them as fact. Like, one of the theories that actually came out to be true was the theory that journalists were colluding. Like, there were people suspected that there was something going on, considering within a week there were 20 different publications attacking their audience. People thought it strange. Of course, a lot of people thought it was some type of conspiracy. Unfortunately, it was. And I say unfortunately because the person who uncovered it, just by their reputation, undermines the credibility of what he uncovered. So the person who actually uncovered this collusion to kind of, um, I basically shaped the narrative in their favor, was Milo Yiannopoulos. As Milo was actually he had access to this group, and it was about 200 tech journalists, and they went back and started discussing the whole Zoe Quinn issue and Gamergate and whatnot. And he leaked those emails to the public, so people were able to confirm their suspicions in that regard. But there were a lot of other conspiracy theories that may or may not be true. I know one of them was kind of purported by Candace Owens. There's so many different little threads and facets that Gamergate has touched upon, but one of the conspiracy theories that has no proof, that Candace Owens purports, is that Zoe Quinn launched a harassment campaign against Owens. Of course, she has no proof. She only has coincidence. Like, if we look back at the Gamers Are Dead articles, that's colloquially what it's called within the community, where they publish these 20 odd articles attacking their communities. We had a sense that it might possibly be some type of collusion or conspiracy, and we were only able to confirm it with the leaked emails. However, Candace Owens' conspiracy is just that. It's just a coincidence at this time, and there's no evidence to corroborate that there was some type of conspiracy running in the background. So there are uncorroborated theories here and there on both sides of the equation, both on the Gamergate side and on the anti-Gamergate side. So at the time, those against Gamergate were called anti-Gamergate or anti-GG. That's what we'd call them. Actually, that's what they would call themselves, anti-GG. And there was like a subreddit, like the Gamergate subreddit on Reddit was called Kotaku in Action, and the anti-Gamergate subreddit is called Gamergazi. Those two subreddits still exist. So right now, the stuff that they talk about on those particular stuff Reddits are kind of, I don't know, that have nothing to do with what I envisioned Gamergate was at the time. For me, it was not an ideological battle. I know that ideology had driven people to do certain things, but I was very much concerned about the ethical ramifications of what occurred, and being treated like shit by people who are supposed to be catering to you. If you're a game journalist publication, your role is to provide gamers with information, not to talk shit about you. It's just
people who buy our
strange.
products are assholes, man.
Yeah, basically. And who are they doing a disservice to? Not only are they doing a disservice to gamers, but they're also doing a disservice to people who make games. So it's kind of a two-way street. But there were some game development studios that kind of fell in lockstep with what you would call the control left or SJW type politics. There were some who didn't, who actually railed against that. But and there were some that just stayed out of the mess entirely and didn't want to comment on it, and that's fine too. But I think that Gamergate is really messy, but you can find the truth somewhere in the middle. It's you have these two competing narratives, but the narratives do have a little bit of truth in it.
It seems like
I can't.
the way things are almost all the time.
Yeah, basically, and it took me a while to figure that out. Like initially, when you're upset about something, you do not consider the facts. And
Yeah,
that's just true most of the time. Like whenever you react emotionally to something, you do not really consider the facts of the matter. And it took me a while to kind of step back and really considered what everybody was saying. Um, at that time, it was very difficult to cross a bridge in any such way in order to talk to the other side. I know the Gamergate people really did want to talk to the people who were criticizing them. But the people who are criticizing Gamergate did not want to talk to Gamergate. So they were just, it's like firing mortars from a wall. Like you're just blasting people and not allowing them to come to a discussion.
it's
Whereas
Twitter
Gamergate
culture.
wanted to hop that border wall and talk to people.
It's Twitter culture. Gotta just insult people.
Yeah, basically. Basically, there's so many things that happened because of Gamergate. There was a Gamergate block list on Twitter. Um, so people would sign up to these lists and it would automatically block people who are involved with Gamergate. They were trying to basically combat online harassment or something of that nature. I think out of the accounts that were blocked, maybe less than 1% were deemed like harassing accounts. And the majority of harassers were just like what you would call a egg account, which is someone creating some new account
A troll?
that's just a bullshit account. Yeah, basically. Um, a lot of the most of the Gamergate communities that I'm aware of, well, all of them that I'm aware of, were very much against harassment. Um, it's also there's this subjective meaning of what is harassment that nobody could agree upon. Like in some circles, simple criticism is construed as harassment.
Right.
But it's just a question. It's a hard question. It's a difficult question. Are they trying to harass you? No, they're just trying to get some answers, really. They're not calling anybody bad names. They just want to say, why do you think this way? And what about this evidence here? I think in the
Yeah.
anti-Gamergate community, they called this sea lining, which is a way to avoid the chaff to get to the real meat of the matter. So what would
That
happen is,
like that biblical quote, I forget how it goes, but not the wheat before the chaff or something like that.
yeah, something like that. I don't know the quote, but I know what you mean. Yes, the wheat before the. Well, anyway, um, I guess this was a Gamergate tactic. I really don't think it is. It's a way of avoiding bullshit. But what will happen is a Gamergate person would try to talk to an anti-Gamergate person, possibly have some type of little debate on Twitter. Usually, this would occur because they would never usually want to debate in a live stream or anything of that nature. Those debates were very rare, and in some cases, I've seen Gamergaters get their asses whooped because they were not very good at debating. Like one of the most notable ass whoopings I saw was Sargon versus this female feminist, and she just kind of mopped the floor with him. I'll send you this debate later, and I don't know if you'll agree with me, but Sargon got way too emotional in the debate,
He does
and he
that
basically
sometimes.
lost it. Yeah, he lost it Because there are some people who I remember there was a debate at MythCon. I don't know if you're aware of this, where he debated a male feminist. The male feminist lost his cool, and Sargon won. I think in that case, he played a psychological game that paid off. In the case with the female feminist, the psychological game didn't pay off because
Okay.
she was just trying to stick simply to factual things and what the debate was framed around. And he was trying to he got into things that he didn't have sources to back up.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So anyway, debates were going on. People were just calling these assertions for answers harassment. They called it sea lining, and that's when instead of here's how like a typical debate goes. A Gamergator approaches maybe a far left journalist and says, "Well, what about this relationship between X and Y?" And they didn't recuse themselves from an article, or what about they didn't disclose this relationship? Why, please answer us. And the retort to that would be, you guys are just a bunch of misogynistic X, Y, and Z. And then the Gamergate would go back and he wouldn't respond to that assertion. The Gamergator would just go back and say, well, what about this relationship that was unethical? So they would basically stick to their guns instead of being moralized out of the discussion. If you know what I mean, it's
Yeah.
it's a discussion or a debate tactic that I see quite a lot. That it's called a pivot.
It's a good idea.
Pivoting, they're easy to spot, but some people get fooled into actually pivoting. I do a lot sometimes, but then again, when I do realize it, I just kind of hammer one specific point that's not getting answered. But then again, so we have this eruption of the culture war, like we've never seen before. And not only is it an eruption, but it's sustained for at least 2 full years. Um,
Oh shit. Actually.
I'm back.
Oh, did you get kicked out?
Yeah, I got kicked out for a little
Oh,
bit.
I
I don't know.
couldn't.
I just get interrupted from this chat.
Okay.
Well, anyway, what was I saying?
You were talking about how people, well, like how some people were kind of ideological about it, and you were mentioning like Sargon of Akkad, for example, how he got too emotional in one of the debates, and then a different debate that went in the opposite direction.
Yeah, so there are high emotions on each side, and I it was at that point that it was kind of maddening for a lot of people because I think there was a poll done on Gamergate on their political persuasions. Gamergate mostly leaned left. There were a lot of Bernie supporters in Gamergate.
That's funny given the
And
common
Gamergate,
criticisms.
yeah, Gamergate was basically called alt-right for the majority of its existence.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna lie, there were some people that tried to manipulate Gamergate. I know Steve Bannon did.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Milo Yiannopoulos was a plant by Steve Bannon.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, I read that in 2 different books. So
Okay.
Steve Bannon had a political plan to use Gamergate to basically support right wing causes, and this was kind of obvious, especially in the Gamergate discussion groups when we had like these really ideological Trump supporters. Most Gamergate people didn't even like Trump. I'm like, where are all these Trump supporters coming? Like out of the blue,
Okay.
like a bunch of Trump supporters.
Oh, that's definitely Steve Bannon's populism right there.
Yeah, so they were trying to turn. There were people that very much wanted Gamergate to be a political argument. There were a lot of people that also wanted Gamergate to be strictly an ethical argument about journalism. Um, and there were kind of people who skirted the lines as well. Give me a second.
All right.
Okay, so the community of Gamergate, after a while, I think 1 to 2 years in, starts to divide itself. So there's some infighting in the group. There's the people who support only the ethics arguments. There's some people who only support the anti-PC argument and want to wage a war against SJWs. I was very much not on that side. I was pretty much in the ethical argument side. The reason that was is because I was, being somebody who worked in the industry, I was very concerned about this type of behavior. Because, we rely on game journalists to tell the truth about our games. And it's very concerning when there's these underhanded relationships that occur. And that was especially at a time where I was wanting to be an independent developer. I was like, well, if I want to be an independent developer, does that mean I have to suck up to these journalists and
Right.
make sure I puppet their politics and et cetera, et cetera,
That
So,
sounds fun.
yeah, basically. So there was a split. And then there were some people, including myself, that considered Gamergate over at some point. The point at which I thought it was over, which is when we got somebody to. The only thing Gamergate wanted people to do is just listen to them and hear them out. That's it. Through most media outlets, we were basically being slandered as a group. It upset a lot of people. The harder we fought to get the truth out is almost the more slander and misconception and false narratives were just pushed out there.
Right.
There's very few articles I can point you to that really catches the nuance of the group, but the majority of them are just like these ideological screeds against a false boogeyman. I would probably say it's like basically Peterson and postmodernism.
Yeah.
That's how Gamergate was painted.
Right.
As this evil group of people. But anyway,
Trying to break down Western civilization, those evil gamers.
yeah, exactly. Those misogynists, sexists, And there were people that, you know, what's funny, um, and this is kind of the talk that you hear today. It's like, oh, you know, Dave Rubin and and Jordan Peterson, you know, they're profiting off of um, their rhetoric about attacking SJWs, et cetera, et cetera.
Yep.
Those same arguments were being made by Gamergaters against certain SJWs.
This is why I don't buy it when people make that argument. Like,
Neither
yeah,
do I.
so
Like I did, and I didn't. I think, okay, so if they were profiting, so be it. If there's people dumb enough to give them money, that's not, hey, you know, they found people dumb enough to give them money. I'm not going to give them money, but hey.
yeah, I feel the same way.
In the case of Gamergate, it was a bunch of, um, there were three main female figures who were said to have profited off of the controversy of Gamergate. One of these, I guess the most well known, even though she is not the target of Gamergate's wrath, so to speak, was Anita Sarkeesian, who was a
Right.
feminist critic.
That's one of
And
the, would you say that's one of the main people who helped Sargona Bakad get famous?
well, she helped a lot of people get famous. um, if you remember, Dave Rubin had this thing called YouTube Week in his early
Mhm.
days, like a couple days. A lot of the people he invited were actually Sarkeesian critics.
Oh, okay. I didn't know
So a
that.
lot, yes. Well, there were gamers and YouTubers. So anybody who's a
Yeah,
gamer
that's
that's a
true.
YouTuber, that's that Ruben's gonna invite is basically gonna be an anti-SJW gamer YouTuber.
Okay.
So, you know, that boosts that. And the funny thing is whenever you make a controversial thing about somebody, it's likely to make that person famous.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it?
So and that occurs on both sides. So if Gamergate's hammering on Anita Sarkeesian, she's going to use that to create revenue. And
Yep.
if Arnita Sarkeesian is making people upset, they're going to use that to create revenue.
Yep.
It's like they're feeding each other.
Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, but that makes sense.
So, you know, there are these accusations, but um, I guess the problem with Anita and what people were criticizing was that she had made, I think, over $400,000 in Patreon bucks
Oh, wow.
for, I think it was like, um, it was a video series that she was working on called, um, it was basically about female tropes in video games, which pretty much extends to female tropes in any story. But anyway, she made $400,000 and never finished the series. And this was a Kickstarter. So
Oh, right.
typically, when you do Kickstarters and you make your goals, you're kind of obligated to. It's kind of like Patreon, where certain Patreon levels have certain rewards. So if you do a Kickstarter and you donate specific amounts as like you're supposed to get certain rewards, and she didn't meet many of those. Like I know she was supposed to have a physical copy of this series she'd make, and she never finished the series. And not only did she not finish the series, she started a completely different series. So she
Oh,
basically gave like the middle finger to the people who actually donated money to that project.
right.
Um, There was, of course, Zoe Quinn, the mother of the controversy. You know, she used that to write a book. both Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn um, spoke before the UN Human Rights Council. They're invited by Google to have talks. Anita Sarkeesian was doing some campus tours and getting paid to do talks about harassment online. So they did benefit from their controversy, and they definitely had monetary gain because of it. And there were, worst of all, okay, so there's one other person. Her name was Brianna Wu. She used her fame to attempt to run for Congress.
Oh, I didn't know that. Wow.
Well, out of the three, she's probably the least credible and most of a huckster. Um, there's, well, one, she was, I think all three of them were very public about the harassment that they're receiving. And from, at the time, the Gamergate people were getting harassed too, but they would never go into very much detail because the FBI told them not to talk about it publicly.
Oh,
The other side was very public about the harassment. Um, and that made them bump heads with the people who are investigating because if you're airing what the FBI is trying to do, that's not helping the FBI at all. that's if you're doing an investigation, you don't want everything that's going on out in the open. But anyway, out of the three people, someone filed a Freedom of Information Act of the FBI report for Brianna Wu. So the FBI went ahead and investigated Gamergate because of Brianna Wu's assertion that she was being harassed by them.
wow.
And Gamergaters got to read the report. And the FBI came to no conclusion that Gamergate itself was trying to harass her.
Of course.
Of course. So you see that there's all these things give people a political boost, if not political, monetary in some respects. And there's definitely a commerce based off of this controversy.
Yep.
There are a lot of people who gain fame. There's some people who weren't able to hold on to that fame. One of those people is Mundane Matt. He was kind of like Mundane Matt was the Tim Pool before Tim Pool. So Mundane Matt very much talked about the same things that Tim Pool does, but then his viewership dropped off because of the number of scandals. And I don't want to get into the details, but it's basically like a very centrist, left centrist view of politics and culture war topics. He's
Yeah.
not so popular today
No.
because I think the main reason is because he got caught DMCAing people. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's when you go after another YouTuber's video for content that you created. It's a pretty controversial thing to do amongst the YouTube world is to file a DMCA on another creator's video.
Oh, okay.
And he was caught lying about it. So
Oh.
someone asked him if he had did it. He said no. And then they got him to admit that he did finally because they said, well, if you're not DMCAing people, how about you show us your reporting page on your YouTube account through your screen share? It's like, no, I could do that. And then they finally convinced him to do it. And he did. And they saw like, oh, he reported a bunch of people.
Oh, okay.
He gave an excuse that he was depressed, blah blah blah. I understand that, but yeah, he should have just came clean to begin with. But anyway, off of that, Gamergate has been profitable for many people in good ways and bad. And ultimately, was Gamergate a good thing? I really don't know. A lot of it was overblown, and most of the overblown parts of Gamergate were done so by the journalists who reported on it. And the journalists reporting on it were the journalists who were getting attacked. So if you're getting attacked and you had the pulpit to discuss something or at least cover it up or sweep it under the rug, of course, you're going to do that, especially if you're the one being attacked. And it's very that's what happens when you get too involved ideologically as a journalist. That instead of a search for truth, you do things to show that your ideology is true,
Yep.
even if those facts or what you're presenting is not true. And I
Yep.
think this is kind of a widespread problem that
Yeah.
kind of Gamergate uncovered, and then people saw, oh, all these different publications have biases, and some of them are even covering things up and doing shady stuff behind the scenes because of ideology, not because of journalistic ethics.
Yeah.
And this is just what I've learned, like through reading top-notch journalist accounts. Like my favorite journalists are the ones who go after everybody, not just
Yeah,
one
man.
side over and over. Like I know I'm gonna do a little bit of promotion here. Unstructured is gonna have Cheryl Atkinson on soon. She is one of my favorites because she goes after everybody. She went after Bush. She went after Obama. She goes after everybody. She tries to seek the truth. She has no ideological agenda to uphold. And that's what you're supposed to do as a news reporter. Like, it doesn't
Yep.
matter what you agree with. You got to report what happened. You got to report the facts.
Yeah.
And I think the good thing about Cheryl Atkinson, her main concern was truth to power, and it didn't matter what faction was in power. You have to check them, whether you like them or not, whether you like their policies or not. The people in power always have to be put in check, and that's what journalism is for. To put those in
Yeah,
power
I
in
agree.
check. But
Yep.
yeah, Gamergate's a very complex mess. I probably covered like 5% of what the events that unfolded. Um, as I followed it for about 3 years straight, and it's like if you can find online that there's timelines of events for Gamergate, it would take you 3 weeks just to understand and read all the articles that are associated with that timeline of events. So that's why it's such a daunting thing to look at if you weren't in it from the beginning and you're following it daily. Like daily, I was going on to Kotaku in Action and reading what the daily news was with what was going on. And eventually those communities devolved into like anti-SJW groups, and it devolved in such a way that they were attacking nobodies that had no social impact on anyone.
Right.
Like some dumb SJW type would put something on Twitter, and that person would have like 10, like 100 followers. It's like, why is this person relevant? Like,
Yeah.
why are you making some Twitter nobody with, you know, 500 followers who said something idiotic on Twitter a thing? There are millions of people who say idiotic shit on Twitter. Like,
It's like how someone called me irresponsible for supporting Foucault and postmodernism and saying that Jordan Peterson is wrong about it. I've got like 61 followers.
61 followers. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. Well, people have
Yeah,
their opinions, whatever.
on YouTube.
Well, especially on YouTube. YouTube and Twitter, they're both
Yeah,
cesspools of fast thinking, I would say.
yeah,
Um, and a lot of it is due to you have there's no consequence. Specifically, if you are an anonymous person on Twitter or YouTube, to saying stupid shit.
yeah.
Like, none of these people, unless they were drunk off their ass, would spew a tenth of the things that they do on Twitter or in a YouTube comment section.
Right.
It's, I just don't think those are not a accurate representation of normal social interactions between humans.
Yeah.
It's very much a very heightened. It's a heightened version. It's like I don't know. It's like the the Walking Dead of human conversation.
That's a good analogy.
Like extreme as fuck. It's everyone out for themselves. It's kind of ridiculous. And I don't know, I've been just mulling over some ideas. It's like nobody talked about politics this much until the internet came around. Like I don't go
Yeah.
into my everyday life and walk into conversations of people talking about how much they hate Trump and think he's a Nazi. Like in real life, I've never actually heard anyone say that.
I've heard my
But
brother
it's
say that.
oh, you heard your brother say
Yeah.
that Trump is a Nazi?
Yeah.
Well, I have
That was a fun
like
conversation.
well, I guess you're maybe one of the minorities. I don't know. I've never heard people say this in
He's the only
true
person I've ever
conversation.
heard say that to me in real life.
Okay. I don't know. Maybe if I press that conversation with my siblings who are like, I guess you would say certified SJWs, like have PhDs in SJW and have written books about whiteness. Um, if I press the conversation that far, maybe they'd say it. But typically, even they have more nuanced views about things. Like I remember there was this thing about cultural appropriation of Bruno Mars. Like, oh, he's dancing like Michael Jackson. He's culturally appropriating, the dance moves of black people. And I actually saw them post something on Facebook debunking how stupid that idea is. So they're a little bit more. They're not fucking nuts, but they have some probably political views I don't agree with.
Right.
But at least they don't get stupid about. They do get stupid about some of the stuff like male tears. Like, why would you want to own a mug that says that? But but
You know someone
um,
who owns one of those?
yes, they
Holy
do. One of
shit.
them does. They own a male tears mug.
Does it work does that ever get full?
I don't know. I doubt it. But I know that they took it to a conference once, and they were speaking at a conference in front. Like these are people who go to conferences and speak to other SJWs.
Wow.
They're like
Wow.
certified, like SJW. They're not like your regular Twitter SJW. They actually make a living doing it. There's a
Oh,
difference.
like
There's a difference
they're
there.
SJW intellectuals.
Yeah, basically, there you go.
We need to what we need to be teaching children at universities is the importance of activism.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to read my sister's book just to see what it's all about. I bet it's not as crazy as Twitter, like Twitter retards. Like I would
Yeah,
say that in a sense, the new Jim Crow is an SJW book, but it's not. I don't know. Some people would say it is, but I don't really think it is. There's a nuanced conversation about the implications of what the criminal justice system, but at least they do a good job in discussing it.
yeah.
Um,
So,
and I
yeah,
think that's
like
probably the next book we'll talk about, and I'll set up an MMA chat for that.
that's a good idea. Yeah, that like that whole thing that the new Jim Crow that is talked about in the new Jim Crow, like to me that only becomes quote unquote SJW when they blame all of those problems of the disproportional amount of black people who get put in jail and all that kind of stuff as a conspiracy of evil white people.
No, it's not put in that. It's not even put in that type of frame.
Yeah, I know. I
Like
know.
it's
I'm
very
not saying
well
that. I'm not
researched.
saying that book is. I'm not saying that book is.
No, but some people will think that's what the book is. Like
Oh,
people
right.
love to
Yeah.
judge books by their cover or what they think the book
Yeah.
is about.
Like how people
Uh,
did that with the coddling of the American mind.
yeah, I know people just go fucking nuts. Like I think people, I don't know why people like go nuts over Jonathan Haidt and like hate him so much. I was like, Jesus Christ. Like and the funny thing is like most of the people that hate him haven't read the book.
Yeah, that happens a lot. Like most of the people who criticize postmodernism haven't read any books by postmodern writers.
Yeah, I remember someone posted the Haidt interview from JRE. There were so many people that got mad. I was like, wow, do you guys watch the video or listen to the podcast? Like Jonathan Haidt never never bashes left wing ideology.
Yeah.
He
He,
only talks about the consequences of specific thought patterns and actions. Like he never says that the what the things the kids are fighting for in college are bad. He just says that there's a better way to go about it.
yeah.
Um, there's sometimes you got to pick and choose your battles. That's a very good strategical advice.
Yeah.
And the thing is, this this book is to help the left deal with their issues. He provides solutions for them.
Mhm.
This is not about demonizing them.
Exactly.
It's about here's how you can better fix. There's there's no way Jonathan Haidt is going to be able to talk to the right, and because he doesn't live in that world. You know, he's a college professor.
Mhm.
He's surrounded by the left. He grew up in the left. He knows the left, and he it's better for him to talk. Like I don't know, man. It's just some people just get so blind and tribal. They're not real willing to look at advice, and they're saying that it's just um, promoting or getting in bed with the right.
People do that all the time, like because you talk to these people or because you have this particular position, then therefore you're on the alt right or you're alt right adjacent or you're guilty by association or you're bad because you disagree with me about some things.
Yeah, and the funny thing is, he made the argument on Rogan. He says anybody that says that is McCarthy adjacent.
Yeah, I love the way he phrased that. That was awesome.
It's like you're
Yeah.
basically. He does go a little bit about in the book about how like people in these very strict ideological groups will witch hunt their own group in order to weed people out. And
Yeah.
this occurs on both sides. He's not saying this is strictly like a psychological phenomenon on the left. He says this is just a psychological phenomenon.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yes, he gives examples of the left because he's in academia and he has firsthand knowledge and experience with it.
Hmm.
It'd be a little bit disingenuous for him to talk about um, the way crazy right wingers act on 4chan. I don't think Jonathan Haidt spends any time on 4chan or understands that mindset in any significant way.
Yeah.
Um, so he's going with what he knows, and I really don't get the hate on Haidt.
It's like with anything, in my opinion, or like almost all the time when people behave that way. In my opinion, they don't actually entertain those person's thoughts, so they just go with the stereotype of what those person's opinions actually are. And if you look at a straw man of someone, then it's easy to criticize it.
Yeah, and he talks about the alt right in the book too. It's not like he focuses strictly on the left. He
Yeah,
focuses on the alt right within his own realm of knowledge, which isn't a
yeah.
lot. You know, he
He talks about the reactionary politics on both ends of the spectrum.
yeah, and it's basically a feedback loop that never ends unless they reframe the issue as a um, an inclusive, inclusive as in, let's all try to solve this problem instead of creating a tribe that we have to fight.
Common humanity narrative rather than uniting against a common enemy narrative, as Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff put it.
Yeah, there you go. I don't know exactly who because they don't differentiate in writing his writings.
Yeah,
So, yeah, there you go.
like Martin Luther King rather than Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Yeah, there's this funny argument that I was actually engaging in, and I was going to make an addendum to the argument. And this is an argument I was making on Facebook just recently. It mostly has to do with the um, guilt by association fallacy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to point out who made this argument, but I'll just tell you what the argument is. Because Russia supports Tulsi Gabbard and Richard Spencer and what's the other guy? The guy that used to be Trump's campaign manager.
Oh, I don't remember.
The guy, Breitbart guy. What the hell's his name? I have horrible names. Breitbart editor guy.
I don't remember his name.
I said his name early in the damn stream, and I already forgot
Steve
it.
Bannon?
Steve Bannon. Oh, because
okay.
Steve Bannon, Richard Spencer, and all these right wing people support Tulsi Gabbard. That's enough for me not to support her. I was like, okay. I'm thinking, okay, if that's the case, then you can't support Ta-Nehisi Coates because Richard Spencer supports Ta-Nehisi Coates. He loves him.
He does?
He also,
Oh, that actually makes
yeah.
a lot of sense because they're a white separatist and a black separatist.
Oh
wait,
also,
well, I
Richard
wouldn't.
Spencer.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
they're both racial identitarians in some respects.
Yeah.
Like white hatred fuels the alt-right.
Of course. In the same
So
way that black
another,
hatred fuels the alt left.
yeah. So he also loves Antifa. Spencer loves Antifa. He's actually said that both of those movements, he likes them because they support his cause, and they indirectly support his cause by pushing people over to him. So
That
if
makes
that is
sense.
the case, if he says, "Oh, I love these two groups," does that mean because you hate the right so much, you also have to not like Ta-Nehisi Coates and you can't like Antifa? It's just a poor argument to say these guilt by associations determine whether I like this person or not. And that's what I feel like people say about Haidt. what people say about Ruben, even though I think Ruben's political, his he's not good at arguing politics. He's just
No,
not very
he's
good.
he's mostly just good at interviewing people. That seems like most of what he does.
Yeah, like he got destroyed by Rogan, and Rogan's not a political wonk.
Yeah, yeah,
If you get destroyed by Rogan, then you suck at politics. That's
yeah,
all I have to say.
yeah. Well, Ruben is like a total libertarian now, so he buys like all of those positions.
Yeah, even though if he can't logically argue them. But anyway, yeah, it's I don't know what tangent I got on, but it's this tribalism, man. It's no good. It's bad for thinking. It's
Yeah,
bad for critical. It's like the one of the things that most inhibits critical thought.
yeah, definitely. Like these people are just bad, so
The
they're
biggest
on the bad
obstacle to
side.
critical thought
Yeah, it
is
is.
tribalism.
Yeah.
And it's hard to point that out to
It's
people who are tribal.
it's one of those cognitive biases that they talk about in the coddling of the American mind. It's black and white thinking.
Yeah, certainly. So I think we covered Gamergate pretty well. And I know I wanted to introduce a new segment on this show. The new segment is that we're going to pull some questions. They weren't necessarily asked directly to us, but we're going to give our answers and advice anyway. So this is going to be a surprise to Andrew because I did not prepare him with the questions. So this is going to be very on the spot. So let us engage. So from Yahoo Answers, I have a question by an anonymous user. And I'm going to answer the question, and then he has a little blurb about the question. And there's a title, and then there's a little bit more. So the question is it okay to drink a few beers in class? I have generalized anxiety disorder, and I'm stressed out. I want to have a few Modelo beers in class to take the edge off. What say you, Andrew?
I say that sounds all right to me.
To have a little buzz going on?
Yeah, if it works for you, if you're prone to depression in class and it makes you less depressed. I mean, the problem would be that you probably wouldn't be allowed to do that.
I would say that Modelo would be a poor choice. If you want to loosen your social anxieties, I'd say get a little something harder, maybe some Arrogant Bastard. That would certainly do you the service of loosening your social inhibitions. Modelo, I don't know. That's not strong enough. You need a little bit of Arrogant Bastard, maybe a shot of whiskey. But should you drink? It really depends on how good you're at drinking and how cognizant you are. Like,
Yeah, like if
I
you
don't
have
know.
if you have a few beers and then you can't focus in class or anything like that, then it wouldn't work.
Yeah, and then the beer might be a gateway drug to other things. So what if you want to take some cocaine or some meth,
Yeah,
even or some Adderall, even though Adderall would actually do better for you.
yeah. I bet cocaine.
Paying attention.
I bet cocaine would too, for some people at least.
Yeah, cocaine would probably work better because you wouldn't have the downer effect of alcohol because alcohol is a depressive, right? It makes
Yeah,
you.
yeah. Which is kind of ironic that it would potentially help someone with their depression, but people are all very different too.
Like, if you want to think you're the hottest shit in the world, just snort some coke. That will your anxiety will completely drop. You'll talk to everybody about, some crazy ass business deals. You'll be very focused and just think you're the best person in the world. So if you really want to if you really want to get rid of the anxiety and the social anxiety, I think Coke would be the drug of choice.
Can help you get into classroom discussions.
Yeah, and it'll help you, try to talk some people into some stupid, nonsensical business deals as well.
Yeah. Tell them
All
all
right,
about your investments.
so we have another question here. I guess we're a little late on it, but maybe you can use this advice for next year. It says, help. Is there a way to catch Santa? I was shopping at the mall and I was asked by a young boy if the Santa is real. I started pondering about the existence of Santa. I'm planning to catch him on Christmas 2019 to see if Santa is real. Any advices that can help me catch him? Thanks. All right, what do you think, Andrew? What are
Oh, I don't know.
some advice to catch Santa? Well, I think I might have something that might help you. So everybody knows that Santa is very fond of milk and cookies.
Mm-hmm.
So here's one thing you might try. You could put a roofie in his milk. Just crush that roofie up. You know, just put that roofie in a blender or like a bullet, one of those stupid bullet things, and with some milk, blend it up, pour it under, and then all you have to do, well, you're going to make sure to have to get a strong dose because you don't want him to wake up before you do. So make sure you put a bunch of roofies in there, and by the time you wake up in the morning, you'll have there a passed out Santa. I think that could be a way to catch them.
Yeah,
What do you think?
that sounds
Another
like
way, you could probably like set up some Home Alone traps in your living room. So once he goes out the chimney, he can and step over a tripwire, and then a chandelier falls on his skull. That might be a good idea. What about do you have any things that you think would catch Santa Claus, Andrew?
only other thing that I thought of was maybe rigging like some sort of cage to be put as like a trap on the bottom of the chimney so that it's at the bottom of the chimney when he lands in it, and something to do with rigging it so that it closes at the top after he lands in it or something like that. Something like that might work. Probably would
Yeah,
be
you
pretty
can create.
difficult though.
Yeah, there's a company that sells what they call a concentration camp kit for chimneys. You do have to. There is some self-assembly, so if you're not very good at assembling furniture or things like that, so you can call them and request a service to come into your home, and they'll build the Santa concentration camp for you. And you can, on the warranty, it says you can keep Santa for a lifetime. Um, you'll just have to find out what type of labor that you will force Santa to do. One of the many different favorites to force Santa to do is to make toys. So you can
Yeah,
have him make toys, and they don't have to be children's toys. They could be adult toys.
yeah, they
So
can
you
be
can
even
have him
sex
make
toys.
sex dolls. So
Yeah.
you have a human factory, the potential to capture a human factory.
Yep.
You can, so that is another thing you could do.
Yep. That's a good idea.
Yeah, there's one other method I think might work. Um, it's a bit complicated, but it may work. So all of Santa's reindeer are male. So one thing you could do is hire a bunch of female reindeer hookers. So when he lands his sleigh, you let the reindeer hookers loose. And what this does is it stalls Santa. Santa's not going to be able to rein in the hormonal temptations of his reindeer. They're starved for sexual activity. It's going to be very difficult. There's going to be just I don't know how many reindeer, 12 humping reindeers. 12 reindeers a humping. You know, they're going to have to amend that Christmas song
Yeah.
after you do this. So you're going to do that. It's a bit complicated. It takes a lot of prep because it's not very easy to train reindeer hookers. You do have to take them to a specialist trainer that's specialized in animal prostitution.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
hard to get a hold of those folks. So
Yeah.
that would be a third way. It'd probably be the least harmful to Santa. Um, it's just gonna be hard for him to get away from your vicinity, but it won't require him to have a life of servitude or to be drugged where he has a possibility of being sexually molested. All
That's the
right,
best
let's go to
solution.
our next one. All right, next question. Anonymous user. Where can I find new friends at age 28? I am a female who, through poor life choices, has lost most of my friendships. I'm really tired of being alone and would like to make new friends. But I think it's strange to just go up and tall to people I don't know in random situations. Andrew, what do you suggest?
I'd say maybe going to the gym or a yoga class or like a book club, or if you have a dog, maybe go to the dog park or something like that. Might be able to meet people that way, or the library if you want to do it the awesome nerdy way too.
Yeah, the best way to get attention in the library is to just lay out a massive fart. That's the quickest way of getting the attention. It'll get you both male and female attention. I don't know. Some dudes are into farting. It could be an appropriate icebreaker. But here's the thing: if you can get the attention of some dude that you just farted in front of, then there's nothing you can do to fail in
That's
front of
true.
that person.
That's true. Although,
So
although
you
it,
have, yeah, that will create a long-lasting and trusting relationship.
if they're the type of guy who is comfortable with that in the first place.
There's very little you can do to sever that bond,
Yeah.
and that would be the fart bond.
Yep.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of different places you could go to meet people. I would say if you're really just looking for a friend who shares interests, and here's some serious advice, just attend events where that you like, and you'll be able to meet people with like-minded interests. Simple as that. I got a phone call.
Okay. You could go to a concert too. Concerts are obviously a good thing for friends, but I think I might have gone to one by myself once. Or if you're comfortable with going to watch a movie at the movie theater yourself, you could do that too. And then maybe people who like the same music as you at a concert, maybe you could become friends with them. Maybe if you go to the movie theater, people are watching the same movie as you, maybe that means you'll have interests that are similar.
All right, I gotta go. Work stuff.
Okay.